Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Crimsen, and today I will be taking you through how I made my track I Still Think of You on Purified Records. Let's get into it. So, whenever I start a melodic project, I always start with the keys. I always start with the chord structure because then it gives me a little bit of a foundation for the rest of the melodic elements. I can make arpeggios out of them, I can make leads out of them. I know which chord to go to and what notes to use in that particular phrase or, part of the song. So here I started with the low piano. Like I just created small simple chords. Before I even came up with the chords, I decided, okay, what's the feeling I want to go for? And the feeling that I was feeling at that point of time was sad. And I always love music because music is a way for me to express my emotions. So I was feeling sad that day, and I decided, you know what, let's try to have some melancholic chords. I first got this piano, the Labs soft piano. Labs is a great project by Spitfire Audio, and they basically give out free VSTs of certain instruments that they record. Soft piano is one of them. I've actually used the Labs instrument for both the high and the low piano, as well as the guitar lead that I'm going to show you guys in a second. So yeah, I started off with the chords. These are very simple chords. As you can see, nothing too complex, maybe a little bit of inversion here and there. That's about it. But the chords really come to life when you have the higher notes coming in too. So I have the lower notes and then I have the higher notes. These are the higher notes. Both together. That's pretty much the entire chord progression that just keeps repeating in the song. For processing, I did some basic EQing, nothing too complex, just trying to cut out some of the low end so it doesn't interfere with the bass and the kick. I have the track spacer that's kind of cutting out whenever Jordan's voice hits, whenever the vocal gets a little loud and starts competing with the piano ducks out a little bit. This is a great tool. It's like a multi-band sidechain compressor. So you can essentially pick what frequency range you want the signal to come in and duck the original signal from. Right. And this is the amount. It's very subtle. It's not too complex. And then I have a volcano where I use it to filter in and out the piano. This is just automation to make the song feel organic as it keeps going forward. For the drums, I love, if there's a kick that I really like for a certain type of song, I just stick to that kick, and I try to use it for any other song in that vibe that also has the same key. I try to keep the key of the song and the kick the same so that I don't have to worry about issues when it comes to like conflicting with the bass notes, etc., because it acts as just another note in the bass note. It just works well. And then I didn't do anything to the kick, just a little bit of EQing, keeping it simple. For the bass, I started off with just using a Model D as just simple Reese note. It's just a saw wave that I used. The notes of the bass are pretty simple. They just follow the piano's lowest notes. This is where the idea of just writing the piano chords first is the best idea, because then now the bass line is very simple. The way I process the bass line is a little bit of like R bass to boost certain frequencies of the bass that I feel like need to be prominent. Then I sidechain anything, like I basically sidechain anything to the bass that I want to stand out. So what I mean by that is, if I want the toms to hit and I want the toms to be heard more than the bass, I basically sidechain the toms to the bass. So what that means is, whenever the toms hit, let me play it for you, the bass cuts out. You see, that's the bass cutting out. So that it's nice and clean. And the low end needs to be super clean. You just need to be able to make sure that things aren't conflicting, because on a dance floor you will definitely hear it or feel it. You'll feel the bass. Right. Then I have a little bit of an EQ. I also sidechain to the kick, and then I make sure the bass is mono. I then add a little bit of saturation, but I add the saturation only to above 100 hertz so that I'm not muddying up any of the low end. And then finally a limiter to make sure that all the bass notes are kind of the same level. They're not too, one note is not too loud, too much louder than the other. That's essentially it. Next we move on to the claps. I like to keep claps in their own group because I feel like they're so important, and I can just match the energy separately from the drums, and I can control the levels of the clap separately from the drums. So this is the clap. I have 3 claps. Actually, I have 2 claps and 2 snares that I've layered up nicely. I keep at least 1 or 2 clap layer which is wide, and the way I test them is using the MSED tool, which is by Bogzenga. I think this one's free if I remember correctly. But yeah, if you do the mid mute, you'll hear the side. You'll hear whatever the side is left out of it. And the same thing with this one. I just mute, and there's a decent amount of side, what's the word I'm looking for? The side, yeah, whatever it is. All right. Signal, that's what I was looking for, the side signal. All right. And I have the snare panned very strong right. I generally like pan things based on how I feel like the balance is in the mix. I don't try to have a rule about it, just because it can, like, the mix can be very dynamic. Some things can be more left, more right, so you want to adjust accordingly. So in this situation, just dictated that. Next, for the drums, I have the perks going. Drums are my favorite part to work on during the track because they add so much dynamic energy. It just adds the whole energy of the track, right? Drums dictate everything, and the percussions especially create the groove. So it's one of my favorite things to do. So I started with a shaker loop. It's a very strong shaker loop that I really liked, and then on top of it I started adding percussions too. For percussions, a good rule is that you have a call and a response so that people find it catchy. When you have a call to the response, you might not realize it, but you're just getting more drawn into the track a little bit just because you have that call and response. And you see I've like panned them weirdly just to create excitement, sonic excitement, so that people aren't bored with just everything being mono. With melodic house, with even progressive music, as well as some styles of deep house, modern deep house at least, you can take things a lot wider than the more underground styles of deep house. This is a loop that I use in as a bass line. On top, this I think when I put this loop and the shaker together, that's when I got a really good idea of how I wanted the percussions to hit. Because it's a great foundation for the rest of the track, right? And I chose shakers that kind of sound like tambourines, like slightly on the higher notes, because that kind of fits with the vibe of the track. All like the drums, you want to think about like what would dictate the energy. Like, do you want sharper drums? Do you want like percussive drums, or do you want like laid back drums, which kind of just add a little bit of support to your melodic elements? Here, I just wanted to add some support to the keys. I don't want them to drive a groove of their own. I just wanted to add like a slight, movement. Yeah, so they're not like up in your face trying to fight for space with the keys. The next thing that I did for processing drums, I don't do too much. In this case especially, I just used like the fab filter. Sometimes I use like if I want to add if I want to make the percussive element a little bit more of a lead sound or something, I add delay. Here I'm using it as a call and response, so I want to mess with the panning of it a little bit. I want to mess with the stereo imaging, so it creates excitement. Over here I'm using the auto pan, so it just like every now and then it goes left, or every now and then it goes right, and that now and then is dictated by this rate. This one is just like a cool ping pong delay, goes left and right. It's keeping things exciting and interesting. I don't do too much processing, as you notice, just like mostly here I'm messing with the stereo image. Sometimes you need to process things, but all of that should depend on how it sounds as it is. I've seen a lot of people just like default, just have like, okay, I need to saturate this, I need to do this, I need to compress this, I need to do that. And I think that's the wrong way of going about it, because when you have these default ideas, then you're not really taking into account how it already sounds. You really need to see if it sounds right already. If it's simple and it's nice and it fits the vibe, then just go for that. Just leave it clean if it needs to be clean. You don't need to always add saturation unless that's exactly what you're going for, unless the drums do need saturation or anything else in that regard, With the vocals, a lot of the processing, luckily a lot of the processing for vocals Jordan had done for himself, but I still ended up doing a little bit of processing here and there. So the vocals is, I think, the most heavily processed and the most time consuming to process in my process, at least. I should say the word process one more time just to annoy you guys. Yeah, so I used a de-esser at the end on the bus. There's a little bit of EQ. I am slightly ducking it to the kick, especially when it's like actually playing, because there's a lot going on, and the vocals are kind of also part of the groove. So when the vocals are part of the groove, at that point of time, ducking actually makes it stylistically feel nice. It sounds good. It's it's all, there are two things that are happening here. One, it's good that it's like getting out of the way of the kick, because we need to hear the kick clearly. But the other thing is it's creating this like thumping effect, which actually makes it nice. It sounds nice when all the melodies are also sidechained to that kind of. Yeah. So for the lead sound, I used, first I have like a background arpeggio that's going, just to add a little bit of texture to the build up, as well as like, during the drop. This is something you won't even hear clearly. It's so like subtle, but it adds a lot of texture because I'm like slightly modulating it, slightly opening up the cutout. But it's these little things that make your track special, right? For guitars, I'm using the Labs again. I'm using the Peel Guitar 1 preset and instrument. And the guitar, it was kind of a weird way that I went about it. I obviously looked at the notes of the chords that I came up with, but mostly it's because I am a guitar player. I had this tune in my head of an arpeggio, and I tried recording my own guitar, but I'm terrible at like recording guitar, to be honest. And it's been a while since I've played the guitar too, so I had to really just try to adjust the notes to sound realistic. So you see here, I've kind of like adjusted velocities manually as well to kind of make it feel like it's a real guitar. Now, a real guitarist could probably tell that that's not a real guitar that was recorded. But yeah, I mean, it sounds nice and it fits the vibe, so that's what I went for. You'll see some crazy balancing I'm doing. And again, I just went with the feeling, how I felt like, one side was more balanced or less balanced. So this one, the higher one, I wanted to be a little extreme because I wanted it to be clearly noticeable as a separate guitar. And this is the thing, is like generally with electronic music, you try to balance things so everything seems like it's all balanced. But with like acoustic music or with like actual, if you listen to rock music or anything, you'll see like a guitar is just like hanging out by itself in the extreme right or extreme left, and that's part of the experience of mixing like live instruments, because people actually stood at different spots in a studio while recording. So that's kind of what I wanted to go with, is like one guitar standing to the right, one guitar standing to the left, one guy's kind of behind and is in the background. He's providing the background guitar riff, and the main one is just providing the main lower The instrument is fabulous. I highly recommend using that instrument, by the way. And what I do is I run the guitar through a granulizer. A granulizer is a kind of plugin that allows you to make anything into a grain delay. And what it sounds like is this. This is what the guitar would sound like after I ran it through the granulizer. You wouldn't believe that that's the guitar, but yeah, that's what it sounds like after. Grains mess with things a lot, and it just sounds really nice if you're trying to like make a just a build up, or like an effects. It's a creative way of creating an effects, which is not just a white sweep or something like that. So nice, and it just fills up the harmonic spectrum really nicely. But yeah, that's what I did. For vocals, this is a complex process. What I did was I learned this from Oliver Wickham, by the way. Oliver Wickham is a great producer, and he has some tracks which just came out on Anjuna Deep. Go check him out, highly recommended. He's a great friend of mine. But yeah, he gave me some tips on like processing vocal. The easiest way, he said, is to make different vocal chains as sends and returns, so that you don't have to affect their you don't have to like duplicate the channel, or you don't have to like keep constantly affecting the main signal, because you want the main signal to be kind of clean, and then the rest of the the sends and the returns kind of do the processing on the side. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 processing chains. The first one is the Valhalla, which is like a 3.9 second or 4-second delay. Reverb, which is like, you can consider that a hall reverb. Then the other one is like a wooden room, which is like a short reverb. It's It's only like 815 like milliseconds. Then you have two types of delays. You have like one is really short, and then you have the like slightly longer ones, which kind of like, this is more so for, you know, like when you want a phrase or a word to keep repeating. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And the last one is a doubler, just to give more width to the vocals. If the vocals lack some width, if you don't have enough harmonies or something, or if you want to just create some extra harmonies, the doubler by the waves really helps. Right. That's pretty much it. The pad was very simple. I use Omnisphere. All of this is frozen because my computer can't handle any more load. And you know, like as channels add up, the computers, you know, they're different. Depends on your computer's capacity, but like different computers can only take so much load. So what I recommend is always to freeze your heavy instruments so you can actually hear your entire track from front to back without your computer crashing or stuttering at the least. So here I used Omnisphere. I used the LFO tool to make sure it kind of has that pumping feel. You can use the kick to do it as well, whatever works for you. Renaissance compressor. This is what I use to slightly compress the pad if it needs it. The S1 imager is more of it kind of like makes the stereo image wider, and then the final EQ there. And I have this like small vocal sample that I use just to fill in the different gaps in the track, and also act as a response to the male vocal. You are alone in the night. So you notice how like I emphasize on call and response a lot, and that is one of the biggest songwriting tips I can give you, is always focus on like a call and response aspect to the song, because that's a lot of songwriting, especially in electronic music, having something that like talks to each other. You know, in different cultures of music, there are like, you know, men singing something and then women singing right after, or like the main lead singer singing something and then the playback singer singing something, and all of that plays on the call and response aspect of songwriting. So all of that plays into how attractive your song will be to new listeners. And yeah, it's just something that you want to like consciously think about when you're creating instruments. If you're creating like a lead sound, maybe have, instead of having just like one arpeggio, have like an arpeggio that starts off a certain way and then it responds in a different way, right? And then I have just a bit of white noise sound for like really high impact, or like, you know, when I really want to build up stuff. Just have that. This is a simple chain that I have. I do a little bit of automation on the filter. So Volcano is a filter, and I automate like cutting off the low end a little bit during build-ups. You can see that it's happening during one build-up. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very simple track, to be honest. I've written a lot more complex tracks with a lot more instruments, but in the end, I think simple is just better. It's less things to think about, but at the same time, it impacts more. You don't have as many conflicting elements. All the elements that I have generally have a call and response to it, except like the chords, because chords are just the bass line. They're just like setting up the vibe. And same thing with the bass that I have going in this track. It's just a Reese bass. The only other bass, the only like different thing that I do in this track that I usually don't in the other is like I have toms going. And the toms are cool because like sometimes I feel like with the Reese bass, your tracks seem very cookie cutter. They seem like they have a great, you know, emotional element to it, but they're not contributing to the groove that much. So I just wanted to add to the groove a little bit, but not really change the drums a lot to, you know, create like more of a housey tune. So that's why all I did was add a little bit of like toms, and with the drums and the clap, it just sounds really. So hope that was useful for you guys. If you guys have any questions, please hit me up and just mention that in the comments. If there's something else you want me to cover, I will be more than happy to just write that in the comments as well. On top of that, if there are any other songs of mine that you like that you want me to go through, open up, I would be more than happy to. Someone shared all this knowledge with me. I didn't learn this from scratch, so I am more than happy to share this knowledge with you. On top of this, I would really appreciate if you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for any future videos that I have. And on top of it, if you like this release, this song, please support me on Beatport or Spotify. I would really appreciate it if you could share the music, because this is what I love to do, and I do it all for other people. As much as I like listening to my own music, I appreciate it a lot more if other people enjoy it as well. So thank you, and I hope you're having a great day and have a great rest of your day.